5.2 by Councillor Corbett, Oxgangs Primary School.
Thanks, Lord Provost. For the purpose of the webcast, I asked a series of questions about repairs issues at Oxgangs Primary School in the last couple of months. Lord Provost, I asked these questions on behalf of myself and Councillors Arthur and Russ because I think it's really important for the school community to see that councillors are working across the two wards that span the catchment area of the school and also across political boundaries. I also want to ask supplementaries in relation to a very well-intended and well-informed meeting last night of parents, senior management, including the Chief Executive of the Council and the contractor at the school at Oxgangs Primary, which raised a number of important questions. So 2 things just to clarify on. So in relation to answer 3, which is about how the Council ensures that we have confidence in future maintenance arrangements, can the convener say why identified fire risk assessment in December 2016 identified a number of follow-up actions for Oxgangs Primary School which don't appear to have been implemented? So that's the first supplementary. And secondly, in relation to answer 5, which is about our dialogue with the Scottish Government, can the convener say what we're doing to ensure that the future schools programme, which we discussed at length in our budget debate, learns the lessons of these PP1 contracts and doesn't get ourselves into the same kind of problems of complexity and accountability?
On the first question, in relation to question 3, I don't have that detail, but I'll obviously get it for you. In relation to question 5, we will be discussing that later in terms of the motion that we've all jointly put down in terms of inspections. But it would certainly be my intention that when the next round of PPP contracts come forward, we'll make sure that that is one of the issues that we deal with, and deal with it at the beginning of the contracts, not halfway through them.
Item 9.18 is an agenda motion by Councillor Perry on schools inspection and maintenance regime. An adjusted motion by Councillor Perry has been circulated, as has a Conservative and a Green Group addendum. Councillor Perry.
Thank you very much. I'll start off by saying I think members are aware that there was a meeting last night in Oxgangs School with Amy and the parents for give Amy a chance to explain what went wrong in Oxgangs School and justify their health and safety policy. As well as at that meeting, the Edinburgh Partnership tabled a statement, and I'd like to read out the last 3 paragraphs of that statement for those who haven't read it yet, because I think it's pertinent to the motion.
Sorry to interrupt, Lord Provost. Just to be clear, although the report from Edinburgh Schools Partnership was tabled at the meeting, but they were not there, so they didn't actually table themselves. Yeah.
Sorry, if I've misrepresented that, I'm very, very sorry, because they weren't there. Only Amy were there, and they tabled this statement. And I think if I read out the 3 paragraphs, you'll see why it's pertinent to the motion. The last 3 paragraphs. It said, the Edinburgh School Partnership is currently looking at increasing the monitoring of Amy's planned preventative maintenance regime, including but not limited to annual inspections. This monitoring will be undertaken by an independent party that the Council will be invited to comment on, and the scope of this arrangement advanced. This regime will be over and above the contractual requirements, and remember within their contract they have a requirement for health and safety, and will be put in place as soon as practical. The intended purpose is to provide reassurance to pupils, parents and staff occupying the schools, and the cost of any enhanced monitoring will not be passed on to the Council. And otherwise, this monitoring will be paid for by they will pay for it. ESP is open to meeting with the head teacher of Oxgangs Primary, and if appropriate, a representative of the Parent Teachers Council they've got here, but I think they mean Parents Council, to provide more details in due course. The Edinburgh School Partnership also remains open to discussing with the Council further potential improvements to monitoring of the maintenance of the PPPI estate. In summary, please be assured that the ESP treats the concerns raised very seriously. It remains fully committed to continually improving the way the school estate is managed and maintained, to ensure the safety of both children and staff within it, and to provide reassurance to parents. Now, that is a very welcome statement, because it actually agrees with all the demands that we have outlined in our motion. However, I would say to them Instead of they are open to meeting the head teacher and the parents, they should agree to meet the head teacher and parents when the new scheme has been agreed. However, I do wish to just comment on one other statement they made within this report, which I think reflects why we're here. As you remember, there was a flashing on the roof came loose and there was a tile fell down in the school. Amy then repaired that, and we went in and inspected it afterwards, and we found there was a number of things still wrong. In response to that, they said, this report includes various recommendations, the vast majority of which were cosmetic and minor. By definition, then, a small minority were not, and therefore were serious and dangerous. Unfortunately, this is the type of attitude we've had to deal with before, and it's not taken health and safety seriously. One hazard in that school is a hazard, and it has to be eliminated whether it's serious or not. You would have thought after the wall fell down in that school, Amy and the partnership, the Edinburgh Schools Partnership, would have made every effort to ensure the inspections were of a high level, but clearly they didn't. They didn't take health and safety seriously, and it's taken our motion at this Council to force them to address that issue. I don't think we should leave it there. I accept it's welcome, but we need to monitor progress against this. And what I'm going to do is to ask Jason if he'll amend his addendum to include a paragraph that the new inspection regime will be reported to the Finance F&R Committee before it is implemented. We as a Council need to see, the politicians need to see what's been suggested as the new regime for not only for Oxgangs but for the whole PPPI estate. And until we see that, we cannot be satisfied with what they are delivering. And I think, again, I welcome that they've come this far and have acknowledged that their safety inspections have not been appropriate up to this point and are willing to change it. But until we see what they're changing it to and are satisfied, then I don't think we can agree it. And that's why I'm asking Jason to amend his addendum to take that into account. Thank you, Lord Provost.
Just for clarification, Councillor Perry, you're moving both the motion and the amendment by the Coalition simultaneously?
Yes.
Thank you. To second, Councillor Dickey.
This might be a little case of good cop and bad cop, so I apologise before it comes its way. I just wanted to take this moment to say that yesterday I visited Ferryhill Primary School, where I used to teach, to see their new nurture room, and I was introduced to their feelings chart on the wall. And I was asked, how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 5? And I said, and 5 was the happiest, and I said 5 because I'm here at my new school. And that was my answer. So today in this chamber, what I'm asking myself again is how happy I am on a scale of 1 to 5. And on a scale of 1 to 5, I am number 1. Today I am not happy. Today I am angry. And today I am number 1. And I'm that because I'm very disappointed for the people of Oxgangs Primary School, for the teachers, for the parents, for the staff who work there, for the pupils themselves. As Vice-Convener of Education, as a teacher by profession, learning about the failings at Oxgangs Primary School, a school that has already gone through enough, made me really angry, and the wider travesty that has been the PPP school buildings. You know, we've heard of rights-respecting schools, and we're about to launch what kind of Edinburgh child-friendly Edinburgh across this city and embed the rights of children across it. And one of the strongest rights that's embedded right through the UN Convention of Human Rights of the Child is keeping our children safe. And as a council, we are utterly, utterly committed to keep doing that and to keep the focus on it. And our teams are out looking at that all the time, all over the place. However, there is a need to at least ask the question of Edinburgh Schools Partnership. Do they recognise that right in the building of their 17 schools and the failing to carry out the adequate repairs and maintenance that is their duty without our own survey actually identifying that for them? You know, I've never been an ABBA fan. I'm trying to keep these words from swimming right into my brain right now. But money, money, money. It must be funny in the rich man's world. Except it's not funny. It's not funny for pupils and teachers and support staff and parents when it appears the focus was on maximising the money rather than the health and safety of our schools and our children and young people. In days gone by, there was an archaic practice where you put a child to the back of the classroom because of their behaviour. When I heard, this motion kind of tells of that practice, but when I heard, I wanted to put them ESP right out of the classroom. That was my feeling and strength about the health and safety of our young people and our schools. The truth is long gone. When it's our own, independent inspections that ensure the continued safety of our schools. The trust is gone when Edinburgh Schools Partnership cannot turn up at a meeting to face parents given everything that has went before. That is wrong. And trust is gone when through the media that they bring, they actually risk the reputation of a school that is truly excellent and the hard-working teachers and the pupils that have made that possible. So I'm glad to learn. I'm glad to learn there was a bit of positivity last night. I'm glad to see we've received the words in the way forward. But I am with Ian to be open to meeting with head teachers, to be open to meeting with a parent council member where appropriate. They should be running with their arms wide open, and they should have done that from the very first instance. So to finish, fellow councillors, we come together. This is a time for coming together, for the better to invest in our schools in the way forward, to be committed to the safety of our schools, and to take every opportunity in the building of our new schools to be innovative, sustainable, and to be inclusive, and to do that for our young people. Thank you. I formally second.
To move the Conservative addendum, Councillor Rust.
Thank you, Lord Provost. And I would say that on behalf of the Conservative Group, we're very happy to accept the amendment to the addendum. So I would add the extra paragraph that Councillor Perry noted, which has hopefully been caught by the clerk, regarding the inspection regime being reported to F&R. The meeting yesterday evening at Oxgangs Primary School was one attended by a number of parents, and they were very pleased to see the Chief Executive and the senior management team at the Council in attendance, along with Amy. But there was strong condemnation of the Edinburgh Schools Partnership and their handling of this, which I would have thought, certainly, if they were thinking of things simply from a funding, financial point of view, has been a complete PR disaster for them and their shareholders. The Council didn't come off completely free last night. There is some concern about the overall management of the PPP-style projects, and I think there has been lessons learned even in terms of the PPP2, although one example that was given yesterday was in relation to the ceiling tile grid situation on the 21st of February, which was then checked by Amy and signed off by the Council the day after, and there was some amazement that all the tiles within the building could have been checked and signed off by the Council in that very short period of time. But certainly this double-checking, this added inspection, I think is very welcome. If we go back to the Cole report at the time of after the initial wall collapse, it was stated at 7.68 that the inquiry is of the view, for reasons that will be expanded on later, that a fundamental weakness of the process adopted was the lack of properly resourced and structured independent scrutiny of the construction and an over-reliance on the part of the City of Edinburgh Council without adequate evidence that others in the project structure would comprehensively fulfil this essential role. And sadly, it seems for parents in the school community that that's obviously continued over time in terms of the maintenance, and I'm very pleased indeed with the more robust position which we as a Council are now taking. I think the clear issue that has also come out of this is the need for clear communication with parents and absolute transparency, and that's why we're wanting reports going ahead to be publicly available. And I'm certainly very pleased that the estates team have done so much recently to address concerns of parents, and that reports have been compiled quickly and very thoroughly. So it's been a pretty bleak history. We really do hope, for the sake of the Oxgangs school community, that they can move forward, that they can be in the news for lots of great reasons, such as the funding they got for their playground, and not simply about the building's issues. But we seem to have a long way to go with ESP, but they certainly do seem to be on notice, and there is, I think, a consensus around this chamber that their handling of this matter to date has been absolutely deplorable. I move the Conservative addendum.
And to second, Councillor Jim Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Provost. I echo what has been said in the Chamber already. These are complicated contractual relationships, and I think the Council has an opportunity to put itself on a very firm footing by making sure there is rigorous inspection of the work, and then, as our amendment suggests, that comes back to the F&R Committee for inspection and public scrutiny. I move the amendment. I second the amendment, suitably amended.
To move the Green Addendum, Councillor Corbett.
Thanks very much, Lord Provost. There's been a lot of dialogue with officers and across political parties about this motion, and I believe there's a strong consensus about how we move forward. As I said earlier on, already been said just now as well, there was a very well-informed meeting of parents at Oxgangs Primary School last night, which sadly has had to be constantly in the news over the last 2 years about the bricks and mortar of the building, rather than all the fantastic learning and teaching that goes on inside. I know that parents and staff are fed up with that and want to be able to move on from that. The only flaw in the meeting, as has been said already, is the Edinburgh Schools Partnership, which manages 17 of our schools, under that first PP1 contract, declined to attend. So the first part of the Green Amendment recognises that it's utterly unacceptable for a private company which has been taking £1.5 million a month from the Council for running schools to be so unaccountable, and therefore the amendment seeks to ensure that shareholders address that. Secondly, the amendment recognises that confidence in the current maintenance and inspection regime is currently at a very low ebb. Again, this has been covered by other speakers. The experience at Oxgangs is that we cannot be certain about the assurances that are given by contractors over the condition of the buildings, and therefore the Council will need to be hands-on, much more hands-on in checking and double-checking in the months and years ahead. As one parent last night said it, we need somebody to be checking the checkers. And thirdly, the amendment looks ahead to our next big school building programme, which we discussed at some length in our budget discussion back in February. Particularly for high schools, there's up to £200 million worth of new building needing done over the next 10 years. And there's a real risk that the current models for delivering that programme fundamentally recreate the same fault lines that we see in the PPP1 contracts. That must not happen. Lord Provost, it's important that school communities hear that the Council understands and echoes their anger, that will be challenging to those who repair and manage our schools, and that there will be real consequences if they fail, and that assurances, like the one that ESP gave yesterday, will actually be better backed by concrete actions, timelines for repairs, for example, a commitment to ensure that inspections are available and published and seen by parents. And that finally, that we get beyond the whole labyrinth of PPPs, Scottish Futures Trust, hubcos, special purpose vehicles, and get back to the first principle, running schools publicly for public benefit.
And to second the addendum?
Formally.
Are there any? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Lord Provost. I've been asked by Liberton High School Parent Council to share the following words with you. They're very mindful that the debate is around the 17 schools operated and maintained by Edinburgh Schools Partnership, but they have asked me on their behalf to ask a more overarching question in relation to new build funding and funding of the necessary maintenance to our school estate. They are, of course, concerned regarding the decay which has resulted at Liberton in the tragic death of a pupil and, most recently, a near miss, where the decayed state of the reception area, in conjunction with the negligence of a contractor working within the school, resulted in a ceiling collapse. Given the rising rolls pressures in all areas of Edinburgh, and the additional strain this will put on the school estate, we require new modern, fully functional schools equipped to suit the current curriculum deliverables and accommodate rising pupil numbers? And this is their question, the crux of their question. Much has been discussed about the requirement for Scottish Government funding to solve the issue in part or in full. However, to date, no confirmation of this has been forthcoming. If this funding to fund all our high schools does not become available, how does the Council propose to fulfil its obligations to provide the requisite educational environment? Thank you.
Councillor Arthur.
Thank you. I think it's worth remembering that Oxgangs is actually quite a good school, and it's a school that wants to be better. In the last week, they've raised over £900 for Ciara Noble's campaign, which we spoke about earlier today. They've conducted a community clear-up, and the girls' Primary 7 cross-country team beat 55 other schools in Edinburgh to come first. The problem is we don't hear about these things because we hear about the school building rather than what happens inside it. Now, it's clear from the meeting last night that the parents have lost trust in both ESP and to a certain extent the council and their ability to manage the building. And for me, the conclusion I drew from last night was a lot of this stems back to what happened 2 years ago. The building was opened just 3 days after the wall collapsed. ESP assured the council it was safe, and quite quickly the school had to be closed again because it turned out there was much wider problems in the school estate. And at that point, parents realised that ESP hadn't properly checked the school again before it was opened. And a lot of parents really feel like they dodged a bullet there. And last night in the meeting, the concern and even fear was quite palpable in that respect. And I think more recent times that has repeated itself. ESP assured the council that the buildings were safe, whereas in fact they weren't. And we know through council inspections and independent inspections, which the parents asked for, that ESP didn't check the buildings properly after those failures. So whilst I welcome what ESP said in its statement, I really do feel that actions are say much more than words, and really it's their actions we have to hold them to account on, both past and future. So I welcome the motion and I welcome the amendments to it, and I think it's great that we're working cross-party on this. And I think Amy, who did attend last night, apologised repeatedly, and so I really welcome the fact that the honesty they gave last night to parents, and I think the parents welcomed that too, but although I don't want to speak for them. So it feels like last night the commitments were made, and also the motions we have are a big step in the right direction. But I think it's up to all of us now to make sure ESP does deliver and the parents aren't let down again. So I support this motion and the amendments. Thank you.
Councillor Doggett.
Lord Provost, as the fourth councillor who was at the meeting last night, there's not really an awful lot more left for me to say, but I'll say it anyway, Councillor Day. I think it's important to emphasise to all councillors the depth of feeling and mistrust that was expressed by parents last night. I think there was welcome recognition that Amy turned up and held their hands up to their responsibility. There was widespread derision of ESP for their inability to attend the meeting. Even just attend would have been useful. But at the same time, there was also recognition that the Council has responsibilities. And it's very easy for us sometimes to say that lessons will be learnt. But I agree, and I don't say this very often, I agree with Councillor Arthur that it's important that it's just not a case of words, but we also see the actions. And lessons learnt will only be effective once they're put into practice. So it doesn't really matter what our views are on how schools are funded. That's a political issue. This is an issue about the provision of education to the children in this city and it being provided in a safe environment. It's good that the Chief Executive was there last night to hear the very strong views of parents, to understand the depth of mistrust there is between parents and this Council. And I hope that recognising this motion and agreeing to this motion, that we as a group of councillors can start to build what is a very damaged relationship in this City of Edinburgh Council and the parents of Oxgangs School. Thank you.
I have no other elected members indicating they wish to speak. So, Councillor Perry, to sum
Just
up.
a couple of things. I know the Chief Executive can't speak in these debates, but I know he has pressed the partnership very, very hard, and he hasn't missed them when he's been talking about what they need to do. And I'm sure we've given them some more ammunition. The key thing is to get on with it now, as people are saying, and actually produce something on the ground which brings back confidence in the parents that they have in their schools, not only in Gracemount but in all the PPPI schools. In relation to the contract, people are correct. If you look at that contract, it's very, very difficult to start apportioning blame in a situation like this. Unless you can apportion blame and hold people to account, it's very, very difficult then to resolve it. And that contract, if we ever sign anything again like that, needs to be tightened up, and it needs to be tightened up 100%, not just mucked about at the edges. It needs to be at the forefront of that contract. So if we ever sign it again, I suspect we will, if we deliver more schools, we have to pay more attention to that. And secondly, in terms of the contribution in terms of Liberton, it's not part of the PPPI1 schools, it's actually our school. And something did happen in our school. What we have done, if you remember, and I think that it went through the Finance and Resources Committee, that as part of the delivery of the next round of maintenance, clerk of works will be employed in every single school to ensure that that is done safely. And no child, parent or member of staff or teacher will go into any of these buildings until it's cleared by the council as being absolutely safe. So you have my reassurance on that. That's what used to happen before. There was an old clerk of works, not an old clerk of works, there was a clerk of works, actually most of them were old, but there was a clerk of works on site 24 hours to make sure it was built properly and maintained properly. And that's what will happen in the future.
Yeah, so my interpretation is that the Council has agreed the coalition proposal as circulated, which is a slight adjustment, including the Conservative group addendum, which itself has been adjusted to include that the Finance and Resources Committee would receive a report on the new inspection regime before implementation, and also incorporates the Green group addendum as circulated.
Is that correct? Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
919.